Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight's guest is the Assembly member from the 77th Assembly District in the Bronx, a district that includes the Bronx neighborhoods of Highbridge, Claremont, Concourse, Mount Eden, and Morris Heights. He's been excited about an historic cleanup in Highbridge that took years to accomplish. We'll talk about that and show you some photos. He also has a veterans initiative that we'll discuss. In addition, there's been controversy over cannabis regulations that we need to talk about. We have much more to review with Assemblymember Landon Dais. Nice to have you back on the program.
Gary, thank you for having me on as always.
It really is a pleasure to have you. Let's just get to this cleanup. You were excited about this.
Yes.
And so, okay, now people say, well, okay, great, they cleaned up. Now, if you know the area that overlooks the Hudson River, and that hill, my wife and I took a walk down there, and we were like, well, maybe there's dead bodies in here, or who knows what's going on. But it was filled with garbage. Why be that excited over what sounds like a normal kind of thing, a cleanup?
So it's right, the Highbridge area, we have the oldest walking aqueduct bridge over the East River. And this area, the Highbridge, we spent so much money to redo the Highbridge stairs and the Highbridge, right? So it was a jurisdictional issue. Some of the plot was public land and then privately owned by the Old Inc. organization and one of our LLC. I started this campaign 5 years ago. I went through so many steps. I called. I talked to them.
5 years ago.
5 years before I was ever in
I'm
office.
underscoring that so people can start to count how long that was.
I spoke to the general counsel. They had someone do a tour. They made all these promises, and then they're like, oh, we can't find anyone. I found a nonprofit, Pastor Carter, who takes young kids from our community and does cleanups across the South Bronx. I got them lined up. I said, hey, I have this great nonprofit organization. They're willing to do it. And they will even shovel the sidewalk, because they don't shovel the sidewalks in the wintertime.
So now this is not a Department of Sanitation issue?
No, this was a private
because it's
lot.
private land. Oh.
And that's why it was tough. So to finally get it clean, props and thank you to one Bronx Parks Commissioner Aponte and Sanitation Chief Jeff Pitts.
So they did assist?
They did assist big time. We had to get a warrant. We literally had to get a warrant from a judge because it's private property, and we just can't go onto a private property and do something without a judicial order.
And the owners of the property weren't sympathetic or saying it's our property and we'd like it to be clean? They didn't care?
I believe they own vast lots of vacant lots in this area. I do believe they're trying to sell it. And part of me is wondering, did they not do that stuff because there's 5 houses where I live on that line? And I'm wondering, are they trying to undervalue the property so that those houses would sell to do a big development?
Haven't we been through that in the Bronx? Right. I mean,
and I know
go look at what happened in the 70s in the South Bronx.
And I know we're going to talk about rezoning later, but with the new rezoning in City of Yes, you can build a very large property in the area. But my bigger issue is, they didn't do that.
And we have pictures, I think, which would be great to show
and those pictures
what it looked like.
And those pictures still don't do it justice, because there was other pictures where I could get down and below and just, there was mattresses, there was chemical paint buckets, there was chairs, there's just complete garbage. And now it's, for the first time, it is completely clean. It's completely changed the landscape. But more importantly, I had the Bronx Times ran an article on it. A former resident of the area sent in a letter to Emily Swanson, who wrote that story, saying, thank the Assembly members so much. This Highbridge means so much to me. And to see that someone took this charge to make a difference means something. And hopefully we can replicate this across the Bronx, because I do believe a cleaner Bronx equals a safer Bronx. And this needs to be our mantra.
What's so interesting to me, I mean, there are many interesting things that speak about wider issues. Here's somebody who lives there, and various people don't realize that we live there, that there are people who live there, and they want to have some pride, and certainly that area looking over the Hudson River, I mean, my goodness gracious. So now it's clean.
And now it's clean, and me, my neighbor JC, we go up and down the block. Like, someone dumped again on my block today, or further down, and I'm gonna hit up Chief Pitts and the mattress. I'm also I'm going to be funding 7 anti-dumping cameras across my district. I'm going to be putting $248,000 into my capital budget to put up 7 anti-dumping cameras, because we have some hot spots, especially right off Sedgwick Avenue, University Avenue in the Highbridge area, and then some others on the east side of my district around Taft High School. We have dumping areas there, and I'm really, I'm going to put these cameras up because we got to stop people from disrespecting the Bronx. I'm tired of people disrespecting New York. I'm tired of people disrespecting the Bronx.
I want to just emphasize, talk a little bit about, you said there was a not-for-profit, a pastor who runs...
Pastor Carter, yes.
Yes, we need to celebrate that. I mean, and let's duplicate that all over the Bronx and the city. But
Pastor Carter does a great job. H2O is another organization, the Sanitation Foundation. We, in my office, Felix, my chief of staff, we do at least 2 cleanups a month out of my office. That's not part of my legislative job. I do that because I really do believe in cleaning up our community. We're trying to get more young people involved to show that they can make a positive difference in their community by doing something simple. There's a community advocate by the name of Hawk. He does cleanups in his area. He saw that I followed up on some things. People want to see elected officials doing actionable, tangible things. And to me, this is low-hanging fruit. Cleaning up our neighborhood is low-hanging fruit.
It is low-hanging fruit, and we talk about things that lead to disobedience and crime, and especially as modeling for young people. I mean, I think we have pictures of some of the pictures of what it looks like cleaned up, but that's the first step of saying, well, wait a minute, it's not okay to dump. And so if a young person sees that, and I don't know, they're eating potato chips or something, and then they throw it over the thing because everybody else does. But if it's clean, all of a sudden there's a little more, quote unquote, obedience to social conscience.
I'd be the first person to tell you, someone was about to dump some bags right outside of my house. I ran downstairs, got dressed real quick, ran downstairs, and I confronted him.
Wow.
And it almost turned into a confrontation, but he realized I was right. I was like, listen, man, and he pointed to the other garbage.
And he was literally going to throw
5 bags, and he put it back in his car. And I've done that to young people also. When I see them about to throw something, I was like, yo, the garbage pail's right there. And so they get shocked that someone speaks up, but I think it makes a difference. The other thing that I'm big on, clean up after your dog. Oh. I have 2 young boys who like to run. My boys are very fast, they're very athletic, they're very energy, packed boys. And there's nothing worse than them you stepping in dog crap and you walk into your car or walk into your house, right? And if you're a dog owner or a dog lover, cleaning up after your dog is important because dogs can get sick from other dogs' feces. So I really want to make a campaign, just say something, right? Come on, please clean up after your dog. If you're going to own a dog, make sure you maintain the dog in the proper... It's very simple, but it's big.
I'm smiling because it's a personal matter where I park my car in my parking lot. There's a little grassy area, and somebody had a dog do his thing, and I didn't notice it, and I'm driving in the car, and I'm like...
You smell something.
And I'm like... And I couldn't imagine what it was. Of course, I got out of the car and saw the bottom of my shoes. So my wife and I did put up a sign that says, please pick up after your dog. Anyway, okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's good, and we'll watch the trickle down of how that works in developing the community. Totally different. You've done work in advancing the cannabis legislation.
Yes.
Now there's a rather thorny wrinkle in the realization that a major error seems to have been committed by the state, miscalculating the mandatory 500 feet buffer zone between churches and schools, and some of the, not just 1 or 2 or 3, 100, 150 businesses have started their businesses, and now supposedly it's out of regulation. What do you recommend? Now, I know that somebody suggested, well, maybe we should grandfather them in. On the other hand, somebody said, well, you grandfather them in, that defeats the whole idea of keeping them separate from the schools and churches. What do you recommend?
So, as you know, I have a background in cannabis. I'm a cannabis attorney, and I worked in the cannabis field and worked on medical marijuana for PTSD for veterans, and for the adult use legalization. We have to be honest. The Office of Cannabis Management has gone beyond having a rough start, but at this current situation, it needs wholesale change. One, the first thing is done, there's already legislation in place. Assemblymember George Alvarez from the Bronx and Senator Louis Sepulveda from the Bronx, 2 guys I work closely with. George and Lou are great representatives for their communities. They work hard. So they have legislation that would grandfather those organizations in. The crux of the issue...
And you like that idea? That's an okay idea?
I feel like...
You don't love it, I'm sure.
It's one of those things, is we have no choice almost. Because one, we've had this program. The cannabis program has had such a rough start at getting off the ground. You know, we do have at this moment probably the most diverse program in the country, which I am proud of, but we have a lot more we could do. The crux of the issue basically is, where does the property line start? So under the cannabis law was pretty much predicated under the SLA, which is the liquor law, and the liquor law says the door of main entry. However, in how they wrote the legislation and how they reinterpreted it in the regulations, they're saying it's the property line. So I think that's where there was confusion, because under the SLA for alcohol is the door of primary entry, not the property line.
So it wasn't that somebody ignored the regulations, it was interpreted a little differently.
That's my understanding, because they used the SLA as, which I had some concerns on when it first happened, as the platform for the marijuana, for the MRTA. I think that is where they asked, because this was literally, the OCM said, hey, Gary, your property is approved. Go ahead and start your...
And they built businesses.
And the second part is, the governor's office, or the OCM, was going to give money for those that were currently in the queue and were in the...
Those?
The OCM was going to give money to relocate for those.
I see.
But the thing about this issue, though, is one, it's already hard to find those properties that qualify.
Right.
Two, it's hard to find a landlord who might want that type of business. And three, you might already have other businesses, because you can't be within 1,000 feet of another licensed cannabis business.
Right.
And now suddenly your ability to find another eligible property is probably a needle in a haystack.
Very
right?
limited.
And as someone who's in this industry, I can tell you right now, they spent thousands upon thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to this point. And now you're asking them to spend another couple $100,000 where they just don't have that type of liquidity and cash.
So you think this legislation is the way to go?
And well, the OCM has already come out and said they're not going to move on any violations right now, because the real big issue for these companies is that they have to re-up their license, and you have to be within the regulatory qualification. Right.
So
the concern was, will those organizations get their licenses renewed?
So this Alvarez Sepulveda legislation, you think, is the way?
I think our hands are tied. I think it's what we have to do.
You know, I was surprised. There's a cannabis dispensary, not quite in my neighborhood, but near my neighborhood, and there was a story about it in the Riverdale Press, and they said they do 200 sales a day. Mm-hmm. So it's not an insignificant business. I mean, if a grocery store thought of that, had that, or a deli had that, they'd be thrilled. So that's the way it is. They should be supported, I guess, is the point.
As someone who cares for the industry, cannabis is used amongst races equally, ages equally. A lot of people use it. If you use it in a safe manner, it's fine.
You are a neighborhood guy and a development guy and a housing guy. I know I have moderated housing and real estate forums, and you have enthusiastically participated. We had the Jerome Avenue neighborhood plan.
Yes.
And now, I guess it's already, 2018 or something like that?
Before I was in office.
Right, before you were in office. So looking back, do you think this is the kind, especially with the city of Yes and all the rezoning is out there, when you look at the results, which are in your neighborhood, in your district, do you say, hey, this is a good way to approach development, even in a neighborhood, in a community, in an area? Are you satisfied, or is there more to do when we create a plan like this?
There's always more to do. So I do have my master's in real estate development, and I served on two nonprofit housing boards, HCCI and Mid-Bronx Desperados. So one of my professors, my thesis was on transit villages, which I do believe the Bronx, we're about to have a bunch of Metro North stations on the east side of the Bronx, right? So those
that's been delayed, but we assume it's still coming.
But those can be transit villages. I think we need to do a better job of mixed-use development, and I mean this one way, right? The big conversation, the mayoral's race, affordability, and so all people think is build as much housing as possible, right? And we do need to build housing, but what we also need? Places where people can work. We need jobs, right? The one thing that the Bronx has, we have a bunch of industrial manufacturing properties, and the assumption is, we need to turn that into housing. No, we need to turn that into more higher capacity job creating entities also. We can't just replace all of our industrial areas for housing and then people have no jobs to work at. We need to create a mixed use master plan for the Bronx to ensure that we're building up capacity for light and green manufacturing, safe industrial areas on the east side. And then on the west side and central parts of the Bronx, where we're going to have more housing, make sure that we have really well thought out commercial on the retail floor. And then let's also think about second and third floor, where we need to have accounting offices and law offices, and really create a true mixed economic development process. That is what we're not doing.
So people don't abandon the city and say, I can't find a job that'll pay the rent. And the next thing what that implies, if we're going to build that housing, it's got to be, and I hate to use the word affordable because you could call it anything you want, but it's got to be so that people with regular jobs can afford it.
What is affordable housing if you don't have a job that can afford the apartment, right?
That's right.
And we also need to make sure home ownership, right? Like we talked about the vacant lots in my area and it might be sold. My hope, I'm trying to push it, I want people to be permanent residents of our area, and I want to create an affordable home ownership opportunity.
The missing piece here, and I see it in my neighborhood, a lot of people know I live in Van Cortlandt Village, and there's buildings going up, but they're out of context. There's no discussion, are there going to be enough school seats? Where are those people going to work? Who might pay for the rents that they're charging, which are not regulated at all? And this leads us into a discussion about Zoran Mamdani. He's talked about no more rent raises through rent stabilization, et cetera, et cetera. You've served on the Energy and Cities committees with Mr. Mamdani, Assemblymember Mamdani. What do you think of his plans? These are good ideas? Are these doable?
So
the real estate industry is not happy, a lot of others also, but what do you think?
So it's funny, the cities committee, which I sit on, is going to be one of the most important committees for his administration. I do believe he's going to win.
You support him, or you haven't said yet?
The answer is going to be a yes.
Okay, we heard it here first.
Yes. He's a Democratic nominee. I'm a Democrat. Him and I disagree on some things, but we also agree on some things, like the buses. I actually think it's a good idea.
The free buses.
The free buses, because I think I'll go at it slightly differently. Like I will use sponsorships, like Google sponsors the BX11 bus, right? And MSG sponsors the 134th Street, right? To kind of
public-private partnerships
to undercut the cost a little bit, right? Yeah. But if we can speed up our buses, if we can speed up how people jumping on the back of the bus right now, some aren't paying, right? If we can get those buses moving and people using less cars, right, that lowers our traffic and that also gets our economic output up a little higher throughout the city, right? But at the end
not to mention the air quality
and air quality. But he hit on a key topic: affordability. My wife and I do pretty well, job-wise, and still we have to make tough decisions. So I can't imagine those who make a fifth or a tenth of what we make and how they make their decisions, right? Where they make a decision: do I buy food for my kids or do I pay my Con Edison bill, which keeps going up, and utilities keep going up.
Rent.
I know or rent, right?
We could talk about that if we have time.
And salaries is not going up at the same level as cost of housing. But we need to look into everything like Local Law 11 and Local Law 18, which the City Council passed, where they need to repoint the brickwork, or we have this new law, city coming in, where buildings will be fined if they haven't insulated and their energy usage is out of context. The people who live in those buildings are eventually going to have to pay for that, right? And so we have unfunded mandates, which is going to eventually raise the cost. But yes, I get it. We want to lower greenhouse emissions. We want to make sure our buildings are insulated and have good heating and cooling systems. But if we are going to put that cost upon the renters, right, and the landlords to a degree outside
and the renters also don't have an unlimited capital to work with. So if you're going to put the cost on them, you're either going to create more, homeless people, or you're not going to get it done.
But we're not even just seeing it now. We're seeing it in our co-ops.
Yes.
Grand Concourse Village. Those are massive co-op city. Those are massive buildings. And to repoint and to do all those type of projects is a tremendous cost. And eventually that turns into maintenance fees for the co-op owners. This isn't Billionaires Row. This is not the Upper East Side. These are middle class New Yorkers, Bronxites, who are trying to live the American dream of being a homeowner, which we always say that's the American New York dream, which is slipping away day by day. So Zoran hit on a nerve, which was, I am trying to keep you in your home. Now, as someone who's been on the other side of it, who worked for, who was on the board of a nonprofit, those costs keep going up, though. We have to figure out a way to mitigate the cost for those buildings at the same time in maintenance, because if not, we're going to have a situation we had in the late 70s where owners are going to start abandoning the buildings. So we have to find a balance.
Or
and that's where I'm
doing
concerned.
worse, which is what they did in the 70s. Before we run out of time, I want to talk about some larger issues. We know what's coming out of the federal government. There's a national controversy over redistricting that started in Texas, spread to California. Now, if it continues to widen to other states, let's say, I think I've read that Ohio and Virginia are thinking about doing their thing. Governor Hochul has said if it comes to it, New York will have to do something of that nature. And then basically we've restructured the whole voting system really in the whole nation. What do you think, and what would you recommend to the governor if she were to ask you whether she is or isn't? I don't know.
I might need to look at the camera for this one.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Last year, I pounded the table for the Governor Hochul's team to support Mickey Salaja's bill for funding for a census office. Last year, we lost 2 seats. We lost 1 seat by 89 people. 89 people.
And there's no doubt that 89 people were there but never.
Our response rate is about 63 to 64%. We easily should have 2 more seats in New York than we currently have. That's not even speaking about if Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado didn't abandon his seat, but he probably would have lost that redistricting also. But more importantly, if we focus on the census, and I would also fully support Michael Lasher's bill, which is a redistricting bill, which only is triggered if another state does mid-redistricting. I fully support it because it's time to fight fire with fire. Governor Newsom is doing it in California. New York needs to stand up. But we have an issue, though. We do have to follow the Constitution. I know the President of the United States doesn't care about that, but we do. So we would have to do a legislative session this year and next year, and then it'll be on the ballot, like California, and we'll let the people of New York choose. That's the difference between what we're doing, what California is doing, versus Texas. Texas is trying to do something and force it down the throats of their citizens, and they're getting misrepresented. Think about what's happening in Texas right now. With the new redistricting, it takes 2 million black people to get 1 congressional representative. It takes 1 million Hispanics to get 1 congressional representative. It takes 400,000 for a white Texan to get a congressional representation. This is pure racism, and we have to fight back.
Thank you for not mincing words.
Sorry about that. I'm very...
No, obviously you're very passionate about it. I got 2 more issues.
Sure.
President Trump has called the National Guard into Washington, D.C. He's threatening other Democratic cities, like our cities are called either Democratic or Republican now. They used to just be called cities. Governor Hochul has said she doesn't want him to put the National Guard here, although let's remember there was some talk back when she put National Guard into our subways. How do you balance those 2 concepts?
Honestly, I don't know if you can on that. That's a great juxtaposition. And how do you argue one versus the other? I think the difference is she's the governor of New York, and the governor has the right to utilize what they believe safety for the state. I don't think the president, we are a republic. The state's supposed to be able to independently run themselves and within the frame of our Constitution. But let's ask the question, right? Why isn't he sending the National Guard to Oklahoma City? Republican governor, Republican mayor. Their crime rate is 5 times greater than New York. Why aren't we going into Oklahoma City? Why aren't we going to places maybe in Mississippi or Alabama?
There's one, a city in, I'm sorry I didn't pull up the name, but one of the cities in Louisiana also has very serious crime numbers that are going this way. And of course, that hasn't raised his ire.
But in the flip side, he's talking about Baltimore. Baltimore had record low crime rates over the last 18 months because they've been doing partnerships at work, partly because of President Biden, but putting money into anti-gun, like we have released a grip here in New York. They've been really getting at it and getting the job done. D.C., crime has gone down. New York, crime has gone down. Chicago just had a record year in the drop of crime.
So this is not the time to say there's an emergency, we need to...
No, because why he's doing it is he's expanding his executive powers, and he is slowly rolling out the National Guard to see what can he push. Because here's the next question. Is he still going to have a National Guard order on Election Day on 2026?
He could.
And rolling it out? Is he slow walking? You already saw it happen January 6th. Is he slow walking possible? How can he use the National Guard to slow free press?
I don't want to spend more time on it
Sorry.
because we'll run. That's okay. We'll run out of time. But your thing is, it's not only this; it's what might be next.
Because we've seen them do the buses when it came to migrants, right? They only sent it to blue cities, right? We see it with the National Guard. They're only sending it to Democratic cities. They're trying everything to undermine any state or city that has Democratic leadership.
I want to give you time to talk about something I know you're passionate about. You are going to have a rally on September 30th. Your father was a Korean War veteran. You've begun a
He served in Korea. He wasn't in the Korean War. I want to be.
He served in Korea. That's fair. And you've begun a veterans initiative to end veteran poverty, homelessness, etc. Talk about that. It'll be the last thing we can cover,
Sure.
but I know you're passionate about it, and then you can promote the event on the 30th.
Thank you. So, I'm a son of a vet, and my dad has always told me that the Army did wonders for him. And it pains my dad when he sees other veterans struggling. My dad has done very well for himself. He's had a great life and still living a great life. But he sees other veterans who have struggled, especially those who served in Vietnam, who were part of his generation, a little bit younger than him. My dad was a little older. My dad was in between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And he has always made it a part that he wants to help veterans. And when I see, if you go out into the streets, if you look at our houseless New Yorkers that are out there, you'll be shocked at how many of them are veterans. If you go into our jail system, how many of those are veterans who are dealing with mental health issues, some of that stems from their service in war and injuries that they obtained while doing service. Not one United States veteran should be homeless. Not one United States veteran should not have a job.
We've got about 30 seconds. So what's the effort?
The efforts to end veteran poverty, we're going to work on getting funding for mental health, job training, especially in green jobs for veterans. I'm going to be asking the governor to put more resources into veteran programs in New York State, and I want to make this a national issue. We need to defend our veterans, and it's our time to stand up for them.
And on September 30th, where and when?
September 30th, location still to be determined right now. It's going to be near the Manhattan VA.
We like people in the Bronx who speak their mind. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Dais, for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me.
That'll conclude the program. Well, we had a lot. We still could keep talking, I promise you. We want to thank producer Rebecca Hemick and our BronxNet production and editing crew. And, of course, to you, too, it's always about, and he knows, it's the people of the Bronx that we care about. We'll see you next time. Good night.